For as long as people have grown food, one rule has shaped agriculture. Every season begins again. Seeds are planted, crops are harvested, and when the cycle ends, it starts over. But not every plant agreed to that arrangement. Somewhere today, there are gardens harvesting fresh greens from the same planting year after year. A plant that grows taller with time, survives punishing weather, and keeps producing long after most crops have faded. You rarely see it in stores. You won't find it stacked in seed aisles. And the reasons it stayed hidden say as much about our food system as they do about the plant itself. So if a single planting can feed someone for decades, why was it never meant to be part of the system that feeds us? Well, here is the full story. Most vegetables follow a predictable script. They sprout, grow, flower, produce seed, and decline. The cycle is so reliable that entire farming systems were built around it. Tree collards stepped quietly outside that pattern. Belonging to the species Brassica oleracea, the same lineage that produced cabbage, broccoli, kale, and Brussels sprouts, tree collards are an unusual perennial form of a family normally grown as short-lived crops. Instead of rushing toward flowering, many purple tree collards rarely go to seed at all, continuing to grow year after year while developing thick central stems that can eventually support plants 10 feet tall or more. The effect is subtle at first. What begins as something resembling kale slowly becomes woody, almost architectural, a structure built for persistence rather than speed. And that persistence creates a complication. Because these plants do not grow true from seed and often cross-pollinate with other brassicas, the offspring may not resemble the parent. For growers hoping to preserve the same long-living traits, height, resilience, steady leaf production, the reliable method is cloning. A simple cutting from the stem can root quickly and become a genetic continuation of the original plant. This is how many tree collards have historically spread, passed from gardener to gardener rather than purchased season after season. Even when seed packets appear, they often come with a quiet disclaimer. The seedlings will likely resemble the parent, but they will not be identical. From a biological perspective, this is simply how cross-pollinating brassicas behave. From a commercial perspective, it creates uncertainty. Agricultural systems favor uniform crops, plants that look the same, mature together, and perform reliably across thousands of acres. Tree collards lean toward variation, longevity, and local propagation instead. So they never moved easily into the channels that turned other vegetables into commodities. Not because they failed, but because they resisted standardization. Yet the story of this plant is not only about where it fits, but how it endures. For many vegetables, falling temperatures signal the end. Growth slows, leaves toughen, and the sweetness fades as plants struggle to survive the cold. Tree collards respond differently. As temperatures drop, the plant begins converting stored starches into sugars, a natural protective process that helps prevent cellular damage during cold stress. Gardeners often notice the change quickly. Leaves harvested after a frost tend to taste noticeably sweeter, milder, and more balanced than those picked in warmer months. It is a quiet biological strategy shared by several hardy brassicas, yet in a plant that already produces year-round, the effect feels amplified. While other greens retreat with the season, tree collards lean into it, offering some of their best flavor precisely when fresh vegetables become scarce. This adaptation is about survival. Cold tolerance allows the plant to remain productive deep into months, when gardens usually empty and supply narrows. In regions with mild winters, harvest can continue almost uninterrupted. Even where frost arrives regularly, established plants often rebound once temperatures rise, continuing a cycle that never fully resets. Over time, this creates something unusual in a vegetable garden: continuity. Not the sharp beginning and ending of seasonal crops, but a steady presence that bridges the gap between harvests. And flavor is only part of the story, because a plant that improves as conditions worsen carries a deeper implication, one that becomes harder to ignore as weather patterns grow less predictable. So, if resilience is the trait agriculture increasingly needs, why are so few food systems built around plants that already possess it? Most gardens move in bursts: spring planting, summer abundance, autumn decline. Then the beds wait, bare and quiet, for the cycle to begin again. Tree collards interrupt that rhythm. Once established, a single plant can provide harvestable leaves for years, sometimes well over a decade in favorable climates. Gardeners often describe them less as crops and more as fixtures, something closer to a small orchard than a seasonal vegetable patch. And they ask for surprisingly little in return. Because the plants grow tall and woody, their leaves sit above much of the ground-level pest pressure that troubles low-growing greens. Regular harvesting encourages continued production, allowing the plant to focus energy on new growth rather than flowering. Over time, what began as a transplant becomes a dependable food source that rarely demands replanting. Nutritionally, the leaves resemble traditional collards and kale, vegetables long valued for their dense concentration of vitamins A, C, and K, along with calcium and fiber. It is the same nutritional profile that helped brassicas sustain populations across continents for centuries. But the real shift is not nutritional, but structural. A plant that produces year after year quietly reduces dependence on timing, supply chains, and even seed availability. Instead of racing the season, the harvest becomes part of the landscape, something available when needed rather than only when scheduled. This is why perennial vegetables have attracted growing interest among researchers and small-scale growers alike. In a food system where disruptions can ripple quickly, from weather swings to transportation delays, longevity begins to look less like a curiosity and more like an advantage. Because food security does not always arrive through dramatic innovation. Sometimes it grows slowly in one place and simply refuses to leave. But here is the interesting part: you rarely see it, and well, that's not a coincidence. Because the modern supply chain favors crops that can move quickly, look identical, and endure weeks in transit. A plant meant to stand in the same soil for years follows a different logic entirely, and that difference raises a larger question. If the future of food demands resilience instead of reach, what happens when the crops built for permanence begin to matter again? For most of the last century, agriculture leaned heavily towards speed. Crops were bred to mature quickly, fields were cleared for uniform planting, and harvest schedules became tightly engineered around efficiency. Yet beneath that momentum, another idea never disappeared: the idea of food that stays. Perennial vegetables, once common in traditional food systems, are drawing renewed attention from researchers and regenerative growers. Unlike annual crops that require soil disturbance each season, perennials remain rooted, helping stabilize the ground, reduce erosion, and maintain soil structure over time. Many also develop deeper root systems, allowing them to access moisture beyond the reach of shallow-rooted plants. Tree collards fit naturally into this conversation. Their long lifespan, steady leaf production, and tolerance for fluctuating conditions align with a growing interest in resilient agriculture, especially as weather patterns become less predictable. Small farms, permaculture projects, and home growers have increasingly explored crops that prioritize endurance over rapid turnover. The shift is subtle. There are no sweeping announcements, no overnight transformation of farmland. Just a gradual recognition that longevity carries its own kind of efficiency. A plant that feeds year after year reduces the need for constant replanting. Soil is left more intact. Harvest becomes less tied to narrow seasonal windows. It is less dramatic than technological breakthroughs, but often more durable. Because when agriculture begins asking how to grow food with fewer disruptions, attention tends to return to the plants that never depended on disruption in the first place. Once rooted, a single plant can continue producing edible leaves for many years, sometimes long enough to outlast the garden beds around it. There is no annual restart, no race to re-establish the harvest. The plant simply remains, extending its growth upward while offering food along the way. This kind of permanence changes how a food source is experienced. Instead of planning around short windows of abundance, the harvest becomes part of the landscape. Something dependable rather than fleeting. Gardeners who grow long-living crops often describe a shift in perspective. Food stops feeling entirely seasonal and starts feeling structural, woven into the environment rather than scheduled against it. And perhaps that is the deeper lesson hidden inside a plant like this. Modern agriculture mastered movement, shipping food farther, faster, and more consistently than any generation before. But permanence was never its priority. Tree collards follow another logic entirely. They favor staying power over speed, continuity over cycles. So the question they leave behind is not just about one unusual vegetable. It is about design. When the systems we build prioritize efficiency and the plants themselves prioritize endurance, which one is better prepared for the decades ahead? Share your thoughts in the comments section below, leave a like, subscribe and turn on the notification bell for more amazing videos like this one.